hearts and likes and all those good feeling kind of emojis out there. So you have arrived. It's Euphoria Lunchtime Science with Dr. Jen Myers. I'm Craig Smith, your host, and thrilled to be here and welcome you all. We got Robin saying good afternoon. We got Miami. We're getting the first few shout outs right here and thrilled that you're joining us. I'm going to make sure our Facebook connection is live. I think it is right now. Thank you for jumping on. And if I'm not mistaken, Jen, you're going to be good for next week too. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Next week we'll do detoxification.
Wonderful. Hey, and that's right. Who doesn't like detoxification, right? We're all going to be set with that today. We've got some snips. Some of you might not have seen this as part of the series. We're going to be looking at 4 today. We got a packed call, so we are going to get started right on time here in about 1 minute. Hey, Mesa, how you doing? Hey, Sherry, welcome. Hey, Barb from Canada. Nice. Las Vegas in the house. Lunchtime Science. Yes. Robin, good afternoon. Hey, Jeffrey, how you doing from Ohio? So glad you're here. Remember, we have a goal, guys. Our goal here at Euphoria, right, is to help you and your body create the best you. That's what we believe, right? We believe the body does the miracles when you provide it with the proper materials. And we're thrilled to be at just literally the leading edge of those materials with your own custom DNA-based nutrition. Hey, we got North Carolina here, another Las Vegas, Ohio. Nice. It is 4 a.m. in Tasmania. There you go, Jen. I think they're getting the award for dedication.
Oh, I'm so impressed.
I think that is some dedication right there.
4 a.m. This is amazing.
4 a.m. This is Tasmania, 4 a.m. Just a little early morning chat with Jen. Get ready for a fire hose. You won't need your morning coffee because get ready. We're going to be talking about all kinds of goodness here in just a moment. Well, I think we are straight up, guys. We're not messing around. We've got a time period where we get to enjoy all things Dr. Jen. So here we go with that. Jen, we're going to turn the time over to you.
Thanks, Craig. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me today to talk about the awesomeness of methylation, right? Who doesn't love to talk about MTHFR, MTRR, and FUT2 methylation? Big, huge process. A lot of information here, guys, that I kind of want to go over. I hope I get to your questions. If I don't, I apologize. As Craig says, I sound like a fire hose when I go through these things because there's so much really cool and really interesting, not only about the SNPs, but about the lifestyle factors, which I'm super excited to go over. So let's dive right in, right? So first SNP we're going to talk about, the FUT2, right? So FUT2 has a lot to do with B12, but it also, the other component is probiotic, right? So lots to do with B12 absorption, being able to take B12 from the intestines and absorb it. We have to have a healthy microbiome for that, right? So it's super important that we have kind of this healthy ecosystem and to be able to absorb vitamin B. So let me just get started on the FUT2. So a lot of carriers that have this SNP, right, they're kind of genetically wired to have what we call a wounded inner ecosystem, and that's your microbiome, right? So typically I suggest eating, I'm going to just dive right into this, right? So we're going to dive into food, we're going to dive into lifestyle, we're going to dive into blood work that you should ask for in testing with your practitioners or healthcare providers. So with this FUT2 gene, what do we see? We see a lot of dysbiosis in the gut, right? So we can't absorb these nutrients and things when we have our microbiome, our ecosystem is imbalanced. That includes B12. B12 is literally taken from the small intestine by a specific SNP called TCN2 and put into the bloodstream. So it's super important that we have this healthy ecosystem. Typically, we always suggest eating cultured foods, right? Cultured foods are super important to eat. That's fermented foods, right? So think about that when you think of kombucha and sauerkraut, water kefir, all these different types of foods that sometimes we think, ew, when I talk to patients, they're like, ew, kombucha? And I'm like, I know it's tough to choke down sometimes, but it's really healthy for you with all those live probiotics. Kimchi is another one, yogurt, right? Fermented yogurt. And if you're not a dairy eater, I am not. then you go with a non-dairy base type, right? So that's kind of important. So we want to keep, the goal of this genetic SNP in our lifestyle is to keep our microbiome healthy so we can properly absorb B12 and other nutrients into the bloodstream. Okay, so certain people who do carry FUT2 are kind of more at risk for certain things like heartburn. So if we suffer from heartburn, right? Also from infections from like H. pylori, which is kind of this type of bacteria that infects the stomach. Okay, so I don't know if any of you have ever had an H. pylori test or came back positive with H. pylori. Typically, I see this FUT2 gene associated with it. So because of this, right, so certain research has actually found that the FUT2 gene has the most impact, like I said, on our ability to absorb vitamin B12 from food, right? And also from supplementation, but especially from food, because we want to talk about lifestyle. We're already in the nutrition and the supplementation, so let's talk about the food part, right? So vitamin B12 actually helps the body make blood and make new DNA. That's huge, right? It's a precursor for RNA and DNA, which we kind of learned that when I spoke about methylation in the past. It also helps support a healthy immune system and nervous system, right? So B12, of course, is mostly found in animal-made and animal proteins. We know that. So vegetarians and vegans, right, must be especially careful when they have this SNP and the other ones that we're going to talk about as well. The good news, however, with these people who live that kind of vegetarian or vegan lifestyle is that there's a fermented spirulina, right? So that's vegan and it's also gluten-free and it's also a great source of vitamin B12. So there's lots of things that a vegan and a vegetarian can do. It is tough. I'm not going to lie to you. I do have the pleasure of formulating for a plant-based protein company. Euphoria is not the only ones lucky enough to have me. And I will say that I had to learn to be a vegan. I had to be a vegan for 3 months, test my blood work pre and post, and I'll be darned, guess what was low on me? My homocysteine, my vitamin B12, and my folate was low after I finished it because I didn't supplement. I wanted to see what my body would do naturally. Okay, so I noticed that it impacted the absorption of those B vitamins. I didn't get enough. So there are ways that vegans and vegetarians through food sources can supplement and actually get these nutrients from our food and not just from our nutrition, which we should be taking as well, is super important. Craig, I want to back up a little bit, and I want to say one thing before I go on to the next few SNPs. Why should you care about methylation? Why should you care about it? Why is it important, right? I just want to preface on a few things that it actually does for the body. So when I'm talking about it throughout these variants, you kind of have an idea of what I mean. Neurotransmitter production, okay? That's something methylation is responsible for. Neurotransmitters have a lot to do with our mood, our personality, our sleeping habits, things like that, right? How we think, how we remember, how we feel has a lot of the gut-brain correlation to it as well. Our cell turnover and repair has a lot to do with our DNA, right? Our energy and our mitochondrial functioning. We know I love talking about mitochondria. These B vitamins put energy into the cells to start all these biochemical processes and preface all these amazing things that our body does on a daily basis, right? It also helps with immune function, supporting a healthy immune system. And I'm going to tell you why, okay? The thing about methylation, and I always use a bucket theory when I'm talking to my patients. So I draw my buckets with my lines. I'm going to have my whiteboard up soon. Hopefully, guys, we're going to be doing whiteboard, like little happy little methylation bucket trails and stuff we'll be doing. But here's the thing. So there are over 200 methylation functions that happen in your bodies every day. 200, over 200. That's a lot of processes that are involved within methylation. Okay, so here's my bucket theory. Methyl B12, all right, methylcobalamin and methylfolate, the active form, right? So we've got that's the first bucket. Second bucket is our growth hormones, right? That's our nutrition, our micros, our macros, super important for growth and development, and also has a lot to do with absorption and how we feel and how we take in these vitamins and minerals and food to be able to do everything we do on a daily basis. Then you go into your immune system, right? Because that feeds your immune system. Super important to be healthy and have a healthy immune and inflammatory response. Last but not least, our neurotransmitters, right? Have to do with dopamine and serotonin production, mood and sleep. Okay, so it's really important for us to know that and understand what all this affects. Everybody thinks B vitamins, B12, B9, woo, energy. I feel good when I get my B12 shot. That is such a small amount of what these things actually do. They're so powerful. So if methylation is not supported, right? We don't know anything about it. We didn't test our DNA. We're not taking the right forms of these, right? We're taking folic acid. We're doing our cyanocobalamin injections or taking it over the counter, through sublinguals or through tablets, and we don't understand our DNA. What happens, right? We can have an increased need for nutritional support because our body's not absorbing things properly. It doesn't understand what is this? I don't know how to break this down and use it and absorb it, right? So decrease in nutritional support, and also decreases the production of dopamine and serotonin. Dopamine, motivation, right? There goes our motivation. I'm not motivated to do anything and I don't understand why. That could be part of our problem, right? Our mood, happiness, serotonin, that's what makes us feel good. That's our happy, one of many of our happy different neurotransmitters, and also our social behavior. We start to become a little more introverted. We don't want to be around people so much, and we're not quite sure why. It's not typically our personality to be this way. And some people are just naturally that way, and that's fine too. But these things can be greatly affected, right? And that's a huge impact on our lifestyle, correct? So that's why it's important to understand what these things mean. And that's why I wanted to say this. And also I'm going to talk about homocysteine. You'll hear me bring that up. That's an amino acid that's in our blood that's affected by methylation and can actually increase our risk for heart disease, right? It's super important that we understand that. High levels are actually linked to early development of heart disease. We don't know these things, guys, right? How do we support it? How do we understand the lifestyle cofactors that are involved in it? So we want to make sure that we understand these things. So I'm sorry to go pedal backwards, but I did want to give you guys a little bit of insight. So when I say these things, you kind of are, okay, I know what she's talking about now. So obviously, yes, we want to be our best, do our best. The FUT2 gene, just to kind of go over this, has a lot to do with absorption of B12 in the small intestine. Sorry, Craig, I'm making you go all over the place. Also has a lot to do with healthy microgut biome. So it has a lot to do with our pre and probiotics and being able to maintain healthy and good gut bacteria, which of course prefaces our immune system, as well as the absorption and use of other nutrients and vitamins. So super important. So again, we go back to those fermented foods, those cultured and those fermented foods. So I don't know how many people here love kombucha. Not my favorite thing in the world, but I'll take my little shots here and there. I do love sauerkraut, I will say that. So cultured foods are obviously very important. And here's another kind of just a tidbit, little factor that I think people don't take into consideration: medications, right? So when you're taking specific medications, and for instance, with this genetic SNP, antibiotics, what does antibiotics do? They strip everything, the good and the bad, right? So if we're stripping everything, we already have a mutation within this genetic variant. We're really not going to be able to maintain proper microgut biome. We really are not going to be able to take that B12 from the small intestine to use it in our cells and put it in the bloodstream. So it's going to be even more of a problem. So when I ask patients, long-term use of antibiotics, there's a reason why I ask that. I want to know if you've had a long history and your parents are, oh, she has a runny nose, put her on antibiotic. Oh, something else is going on, antibiotic. Oh, you have the sniffles, the sneezes, or you're coughing, antibiotic. Everybody wants to jump to antibiotics, and I do always recommend make sure that you really need it. I forget the percentage, but it's a pretty high percentage of people, especially children, that really don't need antibiotics. So there's my rant on that. But we also just want to make sure that we are taking our pre and probiotic, especially if we are on any type of antibiotic, which sometimes we do have to. I understand that. We have this genetic variant. Take your prebiotic, take your probiotic. I happen to know of a very good one in case anybody wants to know, reach out to me, and eat those foods that are really rich and those live cultures that we talked about. Again, cultured and fermented foods, probiotics, kombucha, kefir, water kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, yogurts, things like that. Again, if you're not a dairy eater, that's okay. You can have, I've had oat milk yogurt and almond milk yogurt and all these other different things. So again, FUT2, time for me to move on because we're running out of time and I tend to get distracted. Next SNP, please, Craig. MTHFR. Oh my goodness, who doesn't know about MTHFR, right? This is the one that got me in trouble in Dallas, the mother effer gene, as we call it. We've called it that for years. It's nothing new. We always knew what we were talking about when we said the mother effer gene. So anyway, there's two variants of this, right? So there's the 1298 and C677. So the two variants actually have to do with how much we're affected by this. So one is worse than the other and decreases our efficacy of methylation by almost 70% just from having one of them. And the other one is about 10 to 20%. You put it together and it's huge. Imagine having a homozygous on both of these. And I know some people do, right? So let's talk about MTHFR, which has to do with folate or B9. Okay, so I know people want to ask questions and I want to get through this as much as I can. I'm sorry, guys. So I'm going to try to talk fast, but I do want to get the information out. So if you'll bear with me, I'd appreciate it. So MTHFR has a lot to do with folate, right? Everybody thought back in the day taking folic acid was going to do it, was going to be enough. And we're now learning while more folic acid or that synthetic B9 is not desired, more folate, which is a natural form of B9, certainly is, of course. So this is especially true for those who have, of course, this MTHFR defect or variant of either source, either one, right? There's two of them. We do them both because they're really important in the methylation process to understand what both of those mean for us, because it can increase our risk for methylation deficiency, right? And homocysteine levels to be off. We talked about this before, so I diverse, sorry. So when we have this MTHFR defect, the folate in our diet creates more of an opportunity to increase, right? Our folate absorption and that 5-methyl-tetrahydrofolate that we talk about, or the quatropholate that's in your product, right? It does help us when we're eating the right foods and doing the right things to be able to absorb this properly. So the body easily recycles this leftover folate that we take, right? Into this completely harmless compound that our body can use. Whereas folic acid, it actually doesn't, right? So it ends up accumulating in the body. Folate does not. So that's why it's important for us to take the right form and the right amount based off our genetic variants, okay? So we actually found in nutritional data the best sources of folate, right? So I made a list of them for you guys so I can say, here's some really good sources of folate-rich foods that will help you if you have this genetic variant. Okay, let me find where I put it. There it is. All right, I did the little clicking sound with my mouse in case you guys were wondering. Beans and lentils, right? So those are super high in folate, okay? Raw spinach, asparagus, romaine lettuce, broccoli. I love broccoli. I don't know if you guys love broccoli. Put some grass-fed butter on it. That'll increase your butyrate level and your mitochondria too, just a little side note. Avocado, oranges, mangoes, those are all super high in folate. You guys can find these things on the web, of course. Just do folate-rich foods and see which ones are going to be most beneficial for you. And just adding them is just extra support. You guys are doing your nutrition, which is fabulous. But if we can throw in some extra support with food and lifestyle, why not? It's just going to help us that much more. Studies have actually shown that these folate-rich diets can actually enhance the homocysteine lowering effects. And of course, and taking that 5-methyl-tetrahydrofolate supplement as well. I just kind of like saying that word. I don't know what it is. So we want to make sure that we're eating folate-rich foods. We're taking the proper form of folate because it actually does, the excess does get kind of broken down into a compound that the body can use, where with folic acid, it doesn't. It accumulates and accumulates and accumulates, and our body doesn't know what to do with it. So then we have these high levels in our blood. We don't get it into the blood or into the cells where it belongs, and all those important processes that I was talking about. And that's where we start to see these hiccups and people start having problems, and that's what we want to avoid. So healthy lifestyle is extremely important, of course. 2 MTHFR genes, 677, 1298. Of course, 677 being the more, the one that actually decreases our bioavailability a little bit more, 30% efficacy, or excuse me, 30% deficiency if you have a heterozygous or a yellow MTHFR, and then with the 677, and then 70%. If we have a homozygous. And then the other way around for 1298, it's 10% and then 20% for, I'm so sorry guys, that's my daughter, for homozygous. So MTHFR, super important. Folate, not folic acid. Eat those folate-rich foods, beans and lentils, raw spinach, asparagus, romaine lettuce, broccoli, avocado, oranges, mangoes. Those are just a few. Those are the ones that are the most rich that we have found. Obviously, we know in studies are showing that actually eating those foods is going to help your absorbability and actually decrease those homocysteine levels, or that amino acid that's in the bloodstream that can increase our risk for heart disease. Really important. MTRR, right? So I want to talk about this one. MTRR has to do with B12. So a lot of people think if they have MTHFR, it's B12. Well, there's a component there, but it's more folate or B9, where MTRR has a lot more to do with B12. Healthy heart, as it says up here as well. It's actually pretty cool, the B12 kind of absorption process, right? So did you know, all right, here's something. When you take B12 supplementation or eat a food that's rich in B12, right, which we'll talk about that too, there's actually a SNP or gene that coats it with this enzyme. It's called the TCN1 SNP. It coats it with an enzyme that actually protects it from the gastrointestinal system, the harshness of that, so it can make it through that to get into the small intestine, to bind with intrinsic factor, to be released into the bloodstream and get into the cells. It's amazing what our bodies do, right? They're this wonderland. Body's a wonderland, right? It truly is, because we can heal ourselves if we have the right things, right? So that's why we always say, let's make sure we are taking the right supplement in the right amount that's right for us, and having the correct lifestyle to kind of back it up as well. So I just find it neat to know exactly the process of taking a vitamin from the time it hits our mouth until it's into a cell. The processes and steps are incredible, guys. So B12 is obviously largely found in animal products. Guess what? The number one, I'm gonna wait and let you guys go ahead and throw this out there. The number one source of B12 with your food. Let's see it. I can't see you guys on Facebook. I'm so sorry. Anybody? It's liver, right? So I don't know about you guys, but I do not find it appealing to eat liver. I just don't. I've tried it many different ways. I just know it's liver, so I have a hard time with it. Oh, yes, now I see it. Okay, liver. Okay, so here's the deal. So I'm sorry I can't see you guys on Facebook. I'll go back and look at it. I appreciate all your comments. And if you answered me, I'm sorry. I'll give you the credit. But yes, liver is super important. Excellent source. There are bovine and different ways to take this if you feel that you need to and don't want to eat liver, because I sure as heck don't. With my anemic patients, I absolutely, besides supplementation, I absolutely recommend either taking a liver tablet or eating liver if they can choke it down. Because it will help with any forms of anemia. So how do you think a vegan, right, is going to do with these variants, especially with this one? Because are they going to eat liver? Absolutely not. Most normal people won't, let alone somebody who lives a vegan lifestyle. So we have to make sure that we supplement, especially vegans, anybody, but vegans and vegetarians, you can do it. You just have to work really hard at it. To be a healthy vegan or vegetarian. So I don't knock anything. I think what everybody chooses is their own. And as long as we can do it in a healthy manner, that's all that matters to me. Number one diet for MTRR is Mediterranean diet, which I think that we know. Sherry, that's funny. I think that we know that Mediterranean diet is always very healthy. We always talk about it in a very healthy manner. So it's actually been studied. Is it effective for an MTRR variant? So there's another piece of information that you guys know, that it's actually in research that people are looking at the Mediterranean diet and being able to say, this is really going to help affect this variant or this SNP. Okay, so we're talking about rich and healthy fats, right? Olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil, all those oils are really, really good. Make sure you check your temperature, of course, on those, because they can oxidize and become not so great. But healthy fats, including olive oil, I drizzle olive oil over almost every finished product that I eat because it's delicious. I'm very particular about it, so make sure that you guys are getting a healthy olive oil as well. Grass-fed meat. Now we know, let me just say this, with these variants and these homocysteines and this healthy heart, right, that sometimes eating a lot of grass-fed meat, or even meat in general, red meat I'm speaking of, can actually be more detrimental and be worse for us. So we want to make sure, they usually say about once a week to eat meat. Make sure it's a grass-fed, something a little bit healthier type of meat. Just don't go grab anything that could be loaded up with hormones and and pesticides and herbicides and different things. You know, if you choose not to eat red meat, that's fine as well. You're supplementing, and make sure you're throwing in other sources of B12 and things from this Mediterranean diet that I'm going to talk about. Seasonal vegetables. The key to life, in my opinion, is eating seasonal. Local, fresh, seasonal. That is the key to these variants especially, but in general, right? Eating for the season, very important. In Oriental medicine, you know, that was one thing that was studied a lot, is eating foods that are very local to you to create natural histamines within your body and to be able to kind of understand what's going on in the environment, to introduce it. And we'll talk about that in detoxification next week. And also to be able to know where everything came from, to have that soil that we're used to and be in an area that we're used to. So, and seasonal, there's reasons why certain fruits and vegetables grow certain times of the year. So make sure we're eating local, make sure we're eating seasonal fruits and vegetables. Very important. If you do eat dairy, I do not go full fat, of course, grass-fed, cream on top, that kind of stuff. Raw milk is even great for people who prefer to have dairy still. It's just something that I choose not to do because I don't feel well when I drink it. So why, right? Organic grass-fed meat. Fish, right? The fatty fish, wild caught, of course, is best. Don't do that farm fresh stuff, guys. Who knows what you're eating? They say sardines are great, and I'm sure they are. I just don't eat them. I can't do it. But they are a great source of healthy fats. They do help support this MTRR gene very well. Again, the key, guys, here is local, is seasonal, and is fresh. Support your local farmers anyway, right? That's a huge deal. We want to make sure we do that. So Mediterranean diet with the MTRR, folate-rich foods with MTHFR, right? Cultured and fermented foods with the FUT2 gene. Okay, so lifestyle, let's plug into that a little bit. We have about 6 minutes left. If you're gonna, obviously we've talked about this, if you're gonna live a vegan lifestyle, that's fine. You have to make sure you're getting enough B12 and folate in your diet, right? And supplementation, of course. How do we do that? With Euphoria. So diet alone is not going to cut it. It's not. I wish I could say that, oh yeah, you eat everything perfect and you're going to be just fine. Unfortunately, we've seen it in clinic. We've seen it in research. It's not going to be enough anymore. Decrease those methionine-rich foods, right? They can affect our homocysteine levels, and that includes foods like red meat and dairy products. 1 time a week for red meat is suggested. I love a good steak, don't get me wrong, but to have it frequently can increase our homocysteine levels and increase our risk for heart disease, as well as other things. So 1 time a week is recommended. If you do drink or eat dairy products, decrease those a little bit as well, because those can influence an unhealthy homocysteine level and increase our risk for heart disease and stuff. We want a healthy heart, right? Exercise. I love exercise. Not in excess. We talked about this before. You got to be cautious. So there was actually a study done on patients in a cardiac rehabilitation program, right? And it showed that exercise alone actually reduced their homocysteine levels in their blood work. How cool is that, right? So just knowing that even just that partial little bit of lifestyle that we can throw in there is going to help lower our homocysteine levels and decrease our risk for heart disease. In moderation, we don't do anything in excess, of course. Decrease or eliminate things like, eliminate smoking, vaping, all that stuff. We'll talk about that next week. Also, decrease or even eliminate, if you can, your alcohol use. I know we all love, I love a good glass of Prosecco, I'm not gonna lie. However, if we do this constantly, it is gonna wreak havoc on our body and not allow our body to function the way that it's supposed to, okay? Prescription drug use, believe it or not, some of these genetic SNPs, including the MTRR, can actually cause our bodies to what we call hypomethylate and undermethylate the drugs and the prescription drugs that we're taking. So sometimes some people have to take more of something to be able to feel the effects of it, and it lasts longer than it should. If we hypermethylate them or overmethylate them because of some of these variants, right? So we have to take just a little bit less of it. We feel it pretty quickly and it goes away pretty quickly. So everybody is so different, even when it comes to how we absorb and use our prescription medications, right? So we even need to be cautious with that. They can also affect these genetic variants. They can affect our homocysteine levels, and they can affect our microbiome, right? So we talked about antibiotics and how they can kind of destroy our healthy gut bacteria. So there's no symptoms that we're aware of with elevated homocysteine levels, right? I mean, there are things that are tied to it, but there's no, oh, that's an elevated homocysteine level. Do I know just by practice? Absolutely. But symptoms of these genetic variants, right? MTHFR, MTRR, FUT2 can include some of these things. So we're talking anxiety, depression, fatigue, digestive issues, and chronic pain. Those don't sound like any fun, do they? So when I hear these things, I automatically revert back to these SNPs, test them, we find out what they are so we can support them, which you guys have already done and are already doing, which is amazing. So when you go to your practitioner, some of the labs that I do on my patients, or I would recommend that you have done, is your RBC. Make sure it's an RBC, red blood cell folate. We want to see what's actually in the cell as well. RBC folate, your B12 levels, your homocysteine levels, and make sure that even if you're having some gut issues, do a microbiome test, see where your microbiome is off, and that will help to decipher kind of which probiotics you actually need as well, and how to support it so you do absorb these vitamins and nutrients better, because the absorption happens in the small intestine. So if our guts aren't healthy, stomach, large intestine, small intestine isn't healthy, then we're not going to absorb these things that we're taking anyway. Everything that you're taking in your nutrition is helping. The inulin is a prebiotic. It's helping with the absorption of all these different vitamins and minerals that we put in there, these rich plant-based ingredients that we look into very deeply, and to make sure that the body, through peer-reviewed studies and even through clinical research on our behalf, has worked with our patients, right? So methylation, as you can see, is a huge factor in life, right? And has a huge impact on every single biochemical process in our body, over 200 to be exact. So that's a lot. So it has a big impact on how we feel, how we live, how we thrive. Eating the right foods, in addition to taking your nutrition, it's actually going to help implement a healthy and active lifestyle. It will support any methylation deficiencies that we have, and help making sure that we're getting the proper amount of B vitamins into the cell, and we're not starting to accumulate and store these where they can become toxic. So we aren't just talking about B vitamins here, right? We're talking about our overall health and wellness. We're talking about the bucket theory that I was talking about, and how it can affect and influence so many different aspects of our well-being. So make sure you take your nutrition, make sure that you eat these foods that we mentioned that are healthy and healthy lifestyles. So next week, we talk about detoxification, which is another one of my favorite ones to talk about. So we'll get into that and how to help your body naturally detoxify in the foods that will help support that, as well as lifestyle. So Craig, I think I did it. I don't know. I'm sorry.
You did it.
Questions?
Amazing. Wow, you got a big following out on Facebook. We're going to get you connected out there so you can see all those fun comments. Maybe we'll do that through your phone or something. We'll get you dialed in out there and looking at that. But everyone, thanks so much for joining us. These are so fun. Your comments are fantastic. Just, you can feel the energy out there. We're all connecting and doing our best to improve our health. And we are so appreciative of Dr. Jen Myers just sharing her brain. As somebody mentioned, she is brilliant. And it is such a resource. And we've got our own little Euphoria national treasure here in Dr. Jen Myers. Get ready for her next week on detoxification. And we will see you next Wednesday. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.